Okay, everybody, we got a new game with the white pieces. We are rated 792, and Mushtaq is rated 783. So we're very close in rating. We go c4, he goes e5, like a reverse Sicilian, only with a tempo up because we're white. We go g3 because we want to put our bishop on this juicy diagonal. He just develops a knight. So far, this is the first opponent that's done two sensible moves in a row. We're just going to develop our bishop and apply pressure on this diagonal immediately. He brings out his bishop and prepares castling. So he's castling as fast as possible, something we have yet to see in the speedrun. What is this threat? Well, there's no threat. The idea is, I guess, my d-pawn is pinned for the moment. What is the drawback? Well, because there's no knight here to trade for, I can do something like expand on the queen side of the tempo. So I'm going to kick the bishop and see what he wants to do with it. He brings it back here, aiming at the f2 pawn. What does it threaten? Nothing specifically. What's the drawback? He's now moving it onto another square where I can still expand with tempo. And then from there, he could either go back to, let's say, e7. If he tries to go in and hit my rook, I could just plop my knight in there. He could take my knight and double my pawns. So we'll keep it simple, and we'll just bring the knight out for right now. We'll just develop the knight, sensible. He goes knight g4, trying some like fried liver style attack, only from the black side. The thing is, when you do this from the white side, it's an opening after white goes e4 and black goes e5, right? But I didn't play e4, so that means I could put my pawn on e3, and then his pieces don't coordinate anymore. So this isn't really the time or place for the fried liver style stuff. So just to keep it simple, I'm just gonna play this pawn here. This also secretly attacks the knight, sneak attack. I love sneak attacks, and I love free turns. So you see he castles, he doesn't see the sneak attack. And even if he had seen it and let's say moved back, we have a move like b4, and because this pawn is here, he no longer can come in. So he would have to go back. So anyway, his knight's hanging, so let's just take it. He could go here, hitting the queen. That's probably good, but he already lost a piece at this point, so it's not going to make up for the lost piece. I'm just going to retreat my queen to a square that's defended in case he takes it. What else can you do? You could also maybe go for this, but I don't really like that, especially if he drops back. What's your queen doing there? This just looks like a normal move. You could move it back home maybe, only that doesn't protect this pawn. So if you do go to e2 and protect the pawn, maybe he can push. But I don't see that being a problem, so I'm just gonna drop back my queen. And if he pushes, you don't have to take. You can always ignore and just move the piece. And so that's something to take away. You'll find in your games, if you're rated around here, that as soon as there's pawn tension, you do something. You can't just leave the pawns there, but you don't have to take. Try to move a piece first. He takes the pawn. Okay, we could recapture. What else do we have? We could develop, but if you don't recapture, it gives him this square. So let's just do the safe thing and recapture. It also comes with a threat, so it's a tempo move. And you'll see that I get lots of tempo moves against these guys. He goes b6, which in theory defends the bishop, but that's very temporary and short-sighted, because if you consider that I may go b4, the bishop still has to move. Um, so it's not actually defended. So b6 is actually doesn't work in that way. Also, it hangs the rook, so there's that. That's really bad. So what does this threaten? Nothing. What's the drawback? You see, even if I don't do anything but move my king back and forth, my opponent hangs their rook on all on their own. So that's why it's important to just make solid developing moves and wait for your and just look for your opponent's mistakes, because they'll be making lots of mistakes. They'll be just destroying their own position with unsound pawn moves, hanging pieces, um, moving their queen too much, wasting time. And you don't have to do anything crazy. Just develop. It's the key. So he took a rook, um, and now he develops his bishop and attacks our queen. I'm going to retreat our bishop and interpose, offering a bishop trade now that we're up 8 points of material, which is quite a lot. See, black goes a6. How could this possibly be a move that you consider? Maybe his idea is to try to kick the queen. A, that hangs the bishop, and B, you have to get your army in the game. You gotta get your army. You can't go to war without your army. So I'm just gonna take his bishop. Another piece trade since I'm up everything. And if he takes back, I get to take a pawn with check. More free moves. I love free moves. He counter thrusts with the genius b5. No one saw that coming. What's the threat? Win the queen. Not a real threat though, because you're not gonna leave your queen there. What's the drawback? Undefends the bishop, wastes a lot of time. Terrible move. If you take the bishop, he'll take your bishop, which is fine. You could also throw in this check, so that when he takes and you take, you're up a pawn. The downside is that it'll be his turn, so in the other line where you just take and take, he's wasting his turn capturing, so then it's your turn again. So either way works. I guess it's you can choose. I'm just gonna take the bishop and not desperado mine. That way he takes his turn doing this, and then I'll take then I'll get another turn right here where I can continue my development. I can take more stuff. I'm gonna take more stuff only because in response to knight c5, which is a tempo move for him, I have this check, which is a tempo move for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wanted to give him a free move for nothing. Now it's a free move for free move, so it's fine. And now he ties down his rook. I'm going to develop a piece, which he cannot take. And it threatens potential, because the rook is pinned. I mean, right now it can't go there because the queen hits it, and this is just a trade. He offers the queen trade. I'm up everything. I could take a free knight, but I'm up 13 points of material. I'm just going to take the queen. He takes back with the rook. I just finally put my d pawn in the center. He wastes time pushing pawns. I'm going to grab his everything for free. He has no pieces left. He should just resign. That's obvious. I mean, now he's just making random pawn moves. I don't know what the point of any of this is. More pawn moves. I'm just going to get my rook in the game. That's why I move my bishop. And now he walks directly into a fork, which is always nice. And this opens up the bishop diagonal better. And squares for the knights. Okay, well, he's hanging a knight, so I'm going to take it. There's also more stuff hanging, so I'm going to take that too. Until this guy finally resigns. I'm up 17 points of material, so... Come on, guy, go. Okay, he moves. I'm just going to troll him real quick with h3. Just because it's kind of funny. He can't go here. Yeah, he has to go there. But then I'm going to troll him again with this move. And now he has nowhere to go except for here. Which is also pretty funny. Okay, well, he gives up the rook because apparently he doesn't see this square. Maybe he thought it was trapped. I'm just going to take everything. Okay, so now his king's cut off, so now we could checkmate him pretty nicely, probably. We'll just get in some pieces. We'll give him this check. Promote to a queen. And then we just give him the ladder check. And that's the fastest way to checkmate, is just to move in ladder fashion. We finally break through 800. Our opponent goes e4. We're going to respond with d6, opening up our bishop. He's going to take the full center, but opening up both of his bishops. We're going to develop our knight and attack his pawn. He's going to develop his knight and defend his pawn. We're now that we have this bishop out, this knight developed, we want to get ready to castle. We're going to go g6, put our bishop here, so now that it will be developed, and then we'll castle. So we'll develop our bishop. And then we can decide what to do with these after we're nice and safe. He goes bishop g5. What does this threaten? It threatens a peace trade, but I welcome this trade. What is the drawback? Well, it undefends this square. Also, it's developing the queen side, so it's taking him longer to castle king side. But maybe he wants to develop, he wants to castle queen side, so it might fit with his plan. We could immediately put the question to the bishop. We could immediately castle. We could also go, for example, c6. We could go knight bd7. We could go bishop g4. There's so many moves that are all fairly reasonable. I'm going to develop my bishop and pin his knight. It seems like a reasonable move. Okay, so he takes my knight unprovoked. I can understand if I play h6 first and then he takes, but doing it all on your own, unless you have a concrete follow-up that wins something, doesn't make sense. Okay, but now that he's taken a knight, we're going to take back, and I much prefer to have his dark square bishop, because now my dark square bishop is going to be so strong, and he won't have one to contest mine. So I'm really happy with everything so far. He goes e5. What does this threaten? It threatens my bishop. It attacks the pawn. What is the drawback? Well, he's taking away time that he could be developing and castling. So it's a little time consuming. Now if he takes this pawn, we can obviously recapture. That's not a real threat. The bishop we can just drop back. That's not a real threat. And if he pushes the pawn, we can take it. Not a real threat. Okay, should we take the pawn? Well, if we take it, he can't take with the knight because the queen hangs. If we take it and he takes with the pawn, well, now the queens are staring at each other. You could queen trade. He would have to take. You would develop his rook that way. Um, but then you could take the knight. And there are some tactics. That's all fancy and unnecessary. I'm going to drop the bishop back and not develop his rook. I'm going to just keep this pin. And if he takes, I mean, he's just removing his own center, so obviously I have no problem with that. Okay, my opponent said hi. I will not respond. Okay, h3, questioning my bishop. See, now that I'm provoked, I can take the knight. That knight defends this pawn. That queen was also defending this pawn. So now the queen recaptures, applying pressure here and here. Solid move by my opponent. You could probably castle and even sack this pawn, I imagine, and then develop it here. Then maybe knight in. Rook over. Not really sure what's happening there. You could play c6, stopping this, also stopping the knight from coming in. If you play something like the knight in, he'll probably just pin it, and you might be causing problems for yourself because he can push. You don't have a light square bishop to break the pin. So I think c6, stopping the bishop, stopping the knight, and stopping the queen makes a lot of sense. If we push c6 and he pushes d5, trying to break us down, that weakens this pawn. So let's stick with c6, shutting this diagonal. So I did guess correctly that they might push their pawn, but let's say it's their turn again. What does this threaten? Well, if they take, now we can capture with the knight, and if they pin us, it's protected by a pawn. And you can bring the rook over, that should be fine. But it's not their turn, it's also our turn, so something to keep in mind. I'm not going to take and bring his pieces closer to me. There's also this pawn that's hanging, which is the drawback of this move. Also, it doesn't develop and wastes time. I could take this way, and upon taking this way, I can capture with my knight. And if they go to pin my knight, I can defend it with my rook. And on the next turn, I can go a6 and kick the bishop. If they take, I can recapture with the pawn. So I'm going to do that. Hopefully you followed some of that with my arrows, but it's likely to happen on the board. So there's that. He takes my pawn. Now you don't want to throw in this check, because if he takes with the queen, it comes with this threat, and then that's really bad. So also we want to keep this bishop unless we're gonna win something big. So we're just gonna take back with the knight because it's protected by a pawn, and we can further defend it with the rook and even a queen if need be. So he attacks it with the bishop. And like I said, we can just swing the rook over and protect it. I don't see a problem with that. It also develops the rook to a semi-open file. And we're ready to kick the bishop with a6 and see if he really wants to trade. And now the rook and bishop kind of coordinate, so he has to be more careful. He retreats the bishop and targets this square, going for some type of maybe a checkmate, which is a thing if I am not paying attention. But it looks like I can castle safely, and now might be the perfect time. He also relieved pressure on my knight, so this is more of a pseudo threat than a real threat. Now the pawn is defended. As well as this bishop has walked into my rook scope. So white jumps his knight in here. What does this threaten? It's not threatening this pawn, and it has no other jumps, so it's not threatening anything. It also blocks its bishop. What are the drawbacks? Well, it's a waste of time. If you're going to move the same piece twice, it has to be because you have threats. He doesn't have threats. He's not castled. He opens up this diagonal, so now I could take things with tempo, which weakens the dark squares, which is really bad for him because my queen can come there. Also, I have this move e6, right? He's encouraging me to move my pawn forward, and when he moves his knight somewhere, I'll then have d5, tempo on the bishop, improving my position. So I could do that. I could also hop in here, hitting the queen as well as threatening this stuff. So there's a ton of moves here. And I'm running out of time because I'm explaining too much, I'm noticing. So I should probably talk less, move more, and I'm gonna kick the knight. I'm just curious where he's putting it. Oh, he gives me a check that just threatens nothing. The drawback is it hangs a piece, so I'm gonna take the piece and offer the queen trade. And this is also there, and this is an idea. This is an idea. So I'm just showing you things I'm thinking about. Now whether you get to play them or not depends on what your opponent does. So he takes the queen, you have to take back. Nothing to think about. So now moves I'm thinking about. First I'm going to solidify my center and remove my backwards d6 weakness with tempo. Then I'm going to encourage this piece trade because it's not a good one for him, and it lets me double my rooks with tempo. Now I'm attacking stuff. He doesn't defend it. This pawn is defended, right? Now, once you get to the 7th with your rooks, it's tea time. I'm going to double my rooks because that's the smart thing to do, so that when I start eating stuff, if he puts a rook, I can just trade. And this bishop will just be the coordinating piece. It doesn't have to move unless I want to change targets. He tries to move a target out of the way, but I'll just take the other one. And now we get to go in here and set up a checkmate with the help of this bishop. I'm up a bishop and 3 pawns. So he goes to contest the file. Now here's a cool thing. If you just take, he takes, and then he has the file. So I'm gonna go back, which hangs this rook, meaning I'll win a rook if it's my turn. So now if he takes, I get to take, and I'm still here. So it's a cool trick. Just go right back, and he completely misses the fact his rook is hanging because it's hit twice. Hold on, I'm just thinking about something real quick. Anyway, don't ask me what I was thinking about. Because obviously, the free rook is the best move. Okay, now we have ideas like this, and my opponent offers a draw. Oh my god. I'm gonna go b6 and a5, just getting a queen. I think it's just the fastest checkmate. I don't even care. I'm gonna let him take my bishop. I'm actually gonna cut off his king so I can get the fastest checkmate possible so he can't run. Just gonna push. I'm gonna take this so he doesn't checkmate me first. I'm gonna take this. And then the ladder mate one more time. And we'll do one more game. We'll try to make it quick. So we have the black pieces. He goes d4. We're going to respond with knight f6. This guy's over 900, so that's some serious stuff. He goes for the London type idea. I'm going to immediately strike the center with c5. He defends it with c3. What does this threaten? Nothing. What's the drawback? Well, the drawback of moving his bishop was undefends the pawn, which we've seen many times so far. Fine. What else? Well, I'm going to take this pawn. Taking a central pawn with my side pawn. I want to try something weird. Maybe I shouldn't because it's a speed run for you guys, but I'm going to do it anyway. So normally I tell you guys not to move the same piece to develop your pieces, and that is correct. I do say if you are going to move a piece twice, it at least has to come with tempo, so it's like you're not wasting a turn. So I'm going to try this move, knight d5, which does come with a tempo on the bishop. And what I'm looking to do is this diagonal's open. There's no pawn that can interfere. And if his bishop doesn't stay on this diagonal, then I'll be able to develop my queen. He can't block with the knight because I can take. I suppose he can go here. Anyway, this wasn't a winning operation or anything. It was just I was going to get my queen out with tempo, make some trades, and then develop my pieces, you know, just quickly and putting pressure on white instead of him putting pressure on me. But instead, he goes bishop e3. What does this threaten? Nothing. It's a terrible move. What's the drawback? Well, I still get to take it and completely ruin his pawn structure. I mean, it's an awful move, so I'm just going to take it. And now he has to take back. No threat here from him. Drawback is now both diagonals are open to the king. That is also terrible. So now we should develop. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to start with my queen. It's a little weird, but he doesn't have a dark square bishop. And my queen starts on the dark squares, so it's kind of natural. If he wants to offer a queen trade, I will not allow that. I'll probably swing it over to the king side or something. On the other hand, you can just develop your minor pieces. So whatever. We'll start with the knight, the slowest, clunkiest piece. You definitely could go queen a5 check though. Okay, now he stops queen a5 check, and he protects this pawn, but he's not threatening anything. And the drawback is he's not developing minor pieces. Fine. I'm just going to take the center and develop my bishop. He develops a knight and puts pressure on my center. I don't really see a drawback to this move, so that's fine. I can continue developing one of my bishops. Let us develop this bishop here, and it slices through the center. He decides to castle queenside right where my bishop is facing. I don't know about that decision. What's the idea? Well, he's trying to just get to safety. What's the drawback? The C file's open, and his king can't run to the B file because of my bishop. So this is a terrible decision. I'm actually threatening checkmate just by going knight here and knight here and rook here, because that's checkmate. So in light of that checkmate, and the fact that he has no threats on my position, I'm going to swing my rook over, which means he can't do anything with the knight really ever, because he'll walk into discovery checkmates. And now this threat is coming. He can try to stop it with a3, maybe. But then I can go queen a5 and do it anyway, because if he takes, I can go checkmate. So he's toast. And yes, I didn't castle. I didn't move my king. But whose king is safer? Whose king is being attacked right now? Right? So he actually plays a move that makes a great deal of sense, because it stops my bishop from looking down. So that's a really nice find from Tiernan. The threat is he's hitting the bishop and the pawn a second time. Luckily his position's so bad it shouldn't matter for me. What are the drawbacks? Well, he's not developing a piece, he's spending time, and if I let him take this pawn, he's spending even more time just taking more pawns. He may be up a pawn, but the question is, does he have time for it? We'll find out. Let's see. Is there any chance I could leave the bishop there? So what can I do? Queen here, he takes the bishop. Knight here. That's unnecessary. I'm going to drop the bishop back since it's under attack. And whether he pushes or takes, that'll reopen this. So basically I'm down a pawn. He's threatening the knight, which I want to move anyway. But now he's increased the value of my piece from like 1 to 4, you know, by giving it all these squares and targeting his king. It gets extra power. My knight's under attack, but I wanted to go here anyway. Notice that his knight is pinned, so this comes with checkmate, as well as you could recapture here, or even smarter with the queen. So now he plays e4, so that's a really good way of controlling the center with a beautiful pawn mass, opening up his pieces, blocking mine. Really good move, really nice. And it actually stops the checkmate. It doesn't stop me taking this pawn though with check. It just stops the checkmate. Okay, fine. So what can we do about that? I don't like the fact he stopped the checkmate. It's quite annoying. So what I can do is genius. Queen takes d5. And you're like, what are you even talking about? He can't take with the knight because it's pinned. If he takes with the pawn, which the guy's rated 900, he's gonna take with the pawn. That reopens my bishop again. Checkmate with the queen sack. And if he doesn't take, well then I'll just checkmate him a different way. That's a really cool find. I'm really glad I spotted that. The goal is to open the diagonal. That has nothing to do with material count. And he immediately takes, and now you can see the power of this beautiful checkmate. And we gained some rating from these games. That was a really cool find. I like that a lot. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you got to see like what I'm thinking when I do break the rules in those weird cases. And hopefully this helps you with your low elo chess climb. Feel free to submit your games.